Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
On the main mic. On the main mic.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Hare.
It's on two. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
What do I sing? I ran out of tunes. I ran out of tunes. Which one? I can't.
sing when I sing. 'Cause I go too high. This
Can you just stay on scale too?
okay, should I just sing a tune I already sang?
No
Those
one's
are
gonna.
chill. Yeah, no, everybody's done.
Just don't go high. Don't go high. Just stay there.
Okay, then I have to sing this tune.
That's fine.
Oh, actually, I do.
It's okay. No, no one knows.
I did that an hour ago.
Actually, I need to blow my nose. You can do it.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Praladalada dahine. Hiranyakashipurvachaha. Shilantam kanakalaye. Ito narsimho parato narsimho. Yato yato yamitato narsimho. Bahir narsimho hirdaye narsimho. Narasimhamarim saranam prapate. Tava karakamalavare nakam abhuta simha dalita hiranyakashipu tanu brinda keshavatirtha narahari rupa jai jagadisha hare jai jagadisha hare jai jagadisha hare. Jayo Narasimhadev, Jayo Narasimhadev, Jayo Narasimhadev, Jayo Narasimhadev. Jayo Prahlad Maharaj, Jayo Prahlad Maharaj, Jayo Prahlad Maharaj, Jayo Prahlad Maharaj. Nitya Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Hari Bol.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Chayu Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradari. Yasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Jamunadira Vanachari. Jamunadira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradari. Yasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Jamunadira Vanachari. Jamunadira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavindam Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Bolo Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. So this afternoon we are celebrating the disappearance of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, who was an exceptional devotee, very dear to Srila Prabhupada, a good friend of mine also, and a spiritual master of many wonderful devotees. It's very rare to see a person like Bhakti Charu Maharaj, who in a very short time became a very prominent devotee because of his tremendous qualities of humility, compassion, and tolerance, and his ability to empathize with others and make them feel as if they have a great future in Krishna consciousness. That's very rare for someone to be so inclusive, as well as someone who can expand the consciousness of others very quickly to see that there is something way beyond the life of materialism, and that is eternal life in the spiritual world. So this is the message of all the great acharyas in the past. They were always trying to explain that, listen, this is not the only existence. We're existing in a world full of limitations, and those limitations are, in a sense, punishments for mistakes that we've made in the past, although we can't remember what those mistakes are. Therefore, we need the help of spiritual, enlightened persons to give us the knowledge by which we can understand our real potential. Our real potential is to live eternally in the spiritual world. Why? because we have an eternal soul. We are not this body. We can't say that we are this body because the body is always changing. If someone says, I am this body, I could ask them the question, which body are you talking about? You've had so many bodies already in this lifetime. So this is confusing to people because you start out microscopically like a little sperm and you end up maybe 6 feet or 5 feet 10 or whatever, and then that body begins to deteriorate, and eventually at death it's shriveled up and completely different than what it looked like when it was a little baby or a young boy or a young woman or a middle-aged person or in old age. So we can't say I am this body. So the question is, who are we actually and what are we actually? That's explained in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna, where he says, Dehinosmin yata dehe komanam yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir diras namuyate. He says that just as in this body one goes from infancy to youth to middle age, to old age, and eventually death. And this is the natural progression. There are 6 stages of the body. There's birth, there's growth, there's staying, there's giving off byproducts in the form of children, there's dwindling, and eventually there's death. So we are changing the body constantly, and therefore, who are we exactly? We're the witness of all those changes. That's called consciousness. And if we accept that, then we can understand why Krishna says that there is no birth nor death for the soul. He explains this in the 20th verse of the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And we're going to look at that right now because this is the message that a spiritual master gives to the disciple. Najayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavitavana bhuya ajo nitya sasvatam yam purano nahanyate hanyamane sarire. The 20th verse of the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that for the soul there's neither birth nor death at any time. That means the soul is existing before birth, it exists during birth or during life, and it exists after death. It is full eternality of the individual soul. And that means that we are coexistent with Krishna. Krishna has full eternality, and we as a part and parcel of the Lord, we also have full eternality. So in many ways, we are similar to the Lord. The only difference is, when it comes to knowledge, the Lord has infinite knowledge, and if we surrender to the Lord and engage in His service, we can participate in that knowledge, but we can never be equal to it because it's always increasing. And we can also participate in Ananda, the transcendental happiness and joy of the Lord, but that is also increasing. So we can participate it, but we can never emulate it because it's always increasing. There's what you call a competition between increment and measurement. At every moment, Krishna's transcendental loving relationships with his devotees is increasing. So as soon as we measure it, it has increased at that time. So therefore, there's never any boredom in the spiritual world as there is in the material world, because everything, even from birth, begins to decrease. Every moment that passes, we can never get it back again. And we don't know what our karma is. We don't know what we did in the past life. We can only know when either we're successful or we're a failure in life. So you successfully have a good body, you work out, you take, steroids maybe, and but yet you could have an accident and become paralyzed because that's in your karma. So we don't know what our karma is until it actually happens. Of course, you can go to a palmist, or you can go to a person that does astrology. They can give you a certain idea, like, don't go out on Thursday between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock. It's really bad. Well, yeah, but that doesn't really help you. Or you're going to go on a long trip and you're going to become very successful. But that doesn't really help you either. because after the long trip and after the success, you could have an accident. So neither astrology nor palmistry can really tell you substantive information. One time, a person came to Srila Prabhupada and said, Swamiji, you are first class Mahatma, therefore please read my palm. And Prabhupada said, no, I don't do that. He said, no, Prabhuji, all the great Mahatmas, they do that. So you please, all the Mahants, they do that. So you please read my palm. He said, no, I don't do that. Please, I've come a long way. You please read my palm. He said, okay, you insist. So Prabhupada went like this. He said, He went like that. He said, huh? He said, And then he looked at the man and he said, it's all bad. He said, what? What is it? Tell me. He said, I only see birth, old age, disease, and death. Well, that's the truth, isn't it? That's what everybody's life is. Birth, growth, staying, giving off byproducts, or children, and dwindling and dying. So that's the history from beginning to end to the body, but not to the person that's witnessing those changes, because we have what's called an eternal soul. And Krishna explains this in the 15th chapter, 7th verse, where he says, he says, Mamaivam sajiva bhuta jiva loka Mamaivam sajiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manaksastan indriyani karsati stani karsati prakriti stani karsati. He said, the living entities in this conditional world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with 6 senses, which include the mind. Well, we have 5 senses that we know of: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin. And the 6th sense is the mind. And above the mind is intelligence. And above intelligence is the soul. And above the individual soul, there's Krishna, the Supreme Personality Godhead, as Paramatma. So here we have a progression. And if we limit that progression, then we get incomplete knowledge. So if you become an empiricist, empiricists say, we can only accept knowledge that's perceivable with our senses. Well, you just limited yourself. It's not even half the story of life. And then a psychologist says, well, we have to take the mind into consideration also. Well, that's still not the full story. And then some mystics still say, well, there's also the intelligence, but that's not the whole story. And in religionists, they talk about a soul, and that's much better. But their knowledge of the soul is incomplete. You can go from one religion to another, and you'll see they might all agree that there's God, but they don't understand either the soul or God in depth. They have very shallow understanding of it. It's only in one scripture called Bhagavad Gita and its extension called the Srimad Bhagavatam that you have full information about the individual soul, God, and the relationship between the individual soul and God. So, and then also there's full knowledge about the material creation, and there's complete full knowledge about the spiritual world. You can read the Bible, you can read the Quran, you can read the Granth Sahib, you can read the Buddhist literature, you can read the Jain literature. There's very little information about the spiritual world, other than the fact that it exists, and a few sketchy facts, but no complete knowledge. The only scripture that has complete knowledge of the spiritual world is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavad Gita also has knowledge, but it does not elaborate on it about the spiritual world. It simply makes it clear that there is a spiritual world, that it's eternal, that when everything ends in the material world, the spiritual world continues. But the Srimad Bhagavatam has the most complete explanation of how the material world was created, why it was created, and how it winds up on a periodic basis, and then can appear again. But it has complete knowledge also of the spiritual world and of God, who he is, what he likes, how he dresses, what's his address, and what's his likes, what's his not dislikes, etc. So these are the two greatest literatures in the world, the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. But yet, the people that are born in India are ignoring it. Of course, there are some people in India that study it, etc. But the majority of the people are ignoring it now. Why? Because of the material conception of life. And I want to discuss that a little bit because it's very important to understand what it is exactly. The material conception of life is based or predicated on the idea that there is no spiritual world, there's no God, there's simply matter, and that everything in this world is made of matter, and anything that's not made of matter is insignificant because it cannot be validated by scientific research. That, of course, is not true. The whole Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is scientific evidence of the existence of God, but people ignore that. So the material conception of life is an illusory set of beliefs that keep people bound up in the cycle of birth and death and disease and old age. It is taught in modern schools, starting even in kindergarten, going up to your PhD and beyond. It is taught in modern schools to unwitting children so that they will be exploited throughout life as consumers of products that waste their money, time, energy, well-being, and distracts their attention from self-realization and God-realization. This is a very nefarious, organized system in the modern world today. It's called humanistic pedagogy. Humanistic pedagogy rejects the existence of God, says everyone is independent, there's only one life, etc. And this is called the material conception of life. So, first of all, in this basic philosophical system that is being used in education in the Western world, America and Europe, and also in India today, which is surprising. Even India uses the same system called atheistic humanism. And it says that, one, there's no scientific validation that God exists. One can only understand the truth by experimental science, logic, reason, and empiricism, and the theory that all knowledge is derived from sense experience. Then it denies the existence of supernatural or spiritual forces and personalities that influence human behavior and nature. And then, a human being has only one life. There's no such thing as reincarnation. And there's nothing after death. The person stops existing after death. And there's no judgment of a person after death. And sense gratification is the goal of life, and for sustained sense gratification, one needs money by hook or crook. One can study mundane knowledge to qualify for a high-paying job, to earn a good salary, and spend money for as much sense gratification as possible. This is a concept of life summarized as work hard, play hard. One can also become a criminal and become rich by illegal activities and engage in unlimited sense gratification. And next, the disbelief in all holy scriptures, which are considered to be mythological. If out of curiosity one reads holy scriptures, one has the right to speculate and interpret them as he likes. And then the false belief that everything is relative. There are no absolutes. This false concept is debunked in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 1st chapter, 1st verse. By this false concept, one leads an irresponsible life without a moral compass. So these are some of the fundamental principles of the material conception of life. There's a lot more. But the main point is that people are being misled, lied to, and it starts from childhood. And therefore, what happens is one develops what's called the false ego. That is, thinking, I am this body, this material body, and everything related to this material body is mine, such as the attraction between male and female, which is the basic principle of material existence that becomes solidified by sex into a hard knot of lusty attachment. Now, Krishna is not against sex as long as it's used for procreation, but sex out of marriage or not for procreation is considered a sinful activity. Now, many people will argue against that today because of the indoctrination that they've received by the material conception of life. But it's a fact. Why do people suffer today? Just like if you have a child and you tell the child, look, you have to follow certain rules in the house. One of them is you have to listen to me, your dad, and to your mom. And number two, we don't want you to play with matches. It's dangerous. You're just a little kid, so you could hurt yourself or you could burn down the house, and et cetera, et cetera. There are already many rules that a little child is taught by the parents. What happens if you find that the child is trying to set fire to your closet full of clothing and maybe burn down the house? What would you do? Well, most people would say, well, I would try to explain to the child that you shouldn't do this. It's not the right thing to do, and you can hurt yourself. You can burn down the house. Okay. What would you do the second time you catch the child doing the same thing? Well, then you would say, well, I would plead with them, please don't do this. You'll burn down the house, and then what will happen to us? What happens the third time you catch the child doing it? Then most people, after giving up their wimpish approach to child rearing, would say, okay, now you are grounded. And we're going to take your cell phone away from you. No, don't do that. That's the worst thing you could do in this world. You're grounded, and you're not allowed to be alone in your room and lock the door anymore, and we're taking the computer out of your room. So this is the worst thing that can happen to a child today. It is actually the worst. And some children have committed suicide because their parents did that. Did you know that? You can look it up on the internet right now. Child commits suicide because the parent took the cell phone away from them. Yeah, that's how serious it is. Okay, so this is not a joke. It's actually very serious. That is, whenever there's misbehavior, there's going to be some kind of limitation on a person's freedom. You can be speeding 85 miles in a 35-mile zone. You'll get stopped by the police. First of all, you get a $1,000 fine. You have to do again all the education on how to drive a car. If they catch you the second time, they'll take your license away from you. If they catch you a third time, they'll put you in jail and seize your car, right? And if you continue being insubordinate in jail, they'll put you in solitary confinement. So every time there's misbehavior, there's some limitation that's going to happen. Or, in other words, there's another word for that. Limitation is a euphemism. There's punishment to correct the person's misbehavior. It's happening everywhere in the world. Now, we can understand why we suffer. We're suffering today, even though we can't remember what we did. It probably happened in a previous life. But we made some mistakes, and we're continuing to make that mistake today. And unfortunately, modern education, because of the humanistic pedagogy, teaches you that mistake is not a mistake. Just like abortion, it's not a mistake to have an abortion. It's a heroic act by a woman. That's the way it's presented today. And people fall for it. So therefore, there's tremendous suffering in society. Just read the newspaper or listen to the news on the internet. You'll see there's suffering all over the world, and it's tremendous, and it's getting worse and worse in America and all over the world. Now, why is this happening? It's because we are making mistakes, thinking they're not mistakes, and we're going along happily, merrily into an abyss of suffering. And there's tremendous suffering today all over the world. And therefore, a person who says, look, I'm tired of suffering, I got to find out why this is happening. So I had a friend of mine like that. He was suffering very badly because he was being basically scared out of his wits by a ghost. He had married a lady after his divorce who was like himself. He was bipolar. And they were living together happily for some years, and all of a sudden, the bipolarness of his wife became worse and worse. He eventually threw her out of the house. And after that, she committed suicide. And after that, he became spooked by her ghost that was pursuing him. So I had not seen him. He was like a distant cousin of mine. I had not seen him for 40 years. No communication at all between us two. And all of a sudden, he called me up on the phone one day, and he said, "How are you doing?" I said, "What? I haven't heard from you for 40 years." He said, "No, I need your help." I said, "My help? How can I help you?" He said, "Look, it's a long story, but to make it short, there's a ghost that's spooking me every day. It's driving me crazy." I said, "A ghost? You know who it is?" He said, "Yeah, it's a woman who I married, and she committed suicide, and now she's spooking me." I said, "Okay, start from the beginning and come to the end slowly so I can understand this whole thing." So basically, he had rejected her, and it ruined her life because she thought she would live forever with him in a happy marriage, and she committed suicide. So whenever a person commits suicide, they become a ghost because it's a very sinful thing to do. A ghost is a person who has many material desires but doesn't have a material body, a gross material body, to satisfy those desires. So their only hope is to seize the body of another person. And if you want to know one symptom that you have been seized by a ghost, it's when you sleep at night and saliva comes out of your mouth, and when you wake up, you touch it and it smells very bad. That means the ghost has entered through your mouth. Right? Now, it's a serious thing to get rid of a ghost, but it is possible. And so, anyway, my friend said, "Look, I know you can help me." I said, "Look, you haven't spoken to me for 40 years. How do you know I can help you?" He said, No, I know who you are. I looked you up on the internet. You're a priest. You're one of these crazy Hare Krishnas. But I'm sure that you know what to do to get rid of this ghost." I said, "Well, I do. But are you willing to follow it?" He said, "I'll do anything. It's driving me crazy. I can't go with this anymore." I said, "Well, you have to at least theoretically believe that there's God." He said, "I don't believe in God." I said, "Then there's no help." Okay. What do you mean theoretically? I said, "Look, at least for the time that I'm going to tell you what to do to get rid of the ghost, you have to believe that there's a God." I said, "Okay, I'll do that. I mean, I never believed in God, but if you insist, I'll do it." I said, "Okay." And then secondly, you have to look up on the internet ISKCON, ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and you have to look up the rules and regulations that you have to follow in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and you have to look up also how to offer food to God, to Krishna. He said, "Look, this is really far out stuff, you know." I said, "I don't know if I can do this." I said, "Okay, well, just hang up the phone and live merrily on." He said, No. Okay, I'm going to do it. He said, "What's this thing about offering food to God?" I said, "Why does he need food? He's God." I said, "I know. Don't ask too many questions. Just follow what we say." He said, "Okay." So he looked it up. He called me up. He said, "Look, this is really very foreign to me, but I'm going to do it." And I said, "Well, did you see the prayers?" "So why do I have to say the prayers?" I said, "That's the way you connect to God." You see how ignorant people have become nowadays. It's all because of the education that they've gotten. So he accepted to say the prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavali Paskatya Desatani Namo Mahabodhanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guru Chase Namo Nama Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanayitaya Jagatitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Nama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. 3 times. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mahaprasad ki jai. So I said, this is the way you offer to God. And you have to bow down when you're saying it. And when you finish, you chant Hare Krishna. He said, look, I'm only going to do this because, I'm in a tough spot. If I wasn't in a tough spot, I wouldn't listen to one thing you said. So he did it. And 1 month later, he called me up. He said, hey, Harry, he said, it worked. I'm not kidding. It's a true story. It's a true story, right? And I said, look, John, I said, why don't you come and see me? We spend a little time together. He said, I'll think about that. He's never called me back again. Unfortunately, you see, this is the tragedy today. But somehow or other, he had faith that if he called me up, although he hadn't spoken for 40 years, I would know what to do. And he told me, before he called me, he said, I went to see the Baha'is. He said, I went to see the Catholics. I went to see the Protestants. I went to see the Jains. I went to see the Sikhs. He said, they were all talking nonsense. He said, I didn't understand anything and I didn't believe what they were saying. To me, they were a bunch of phonies. Now, that's his perception. I'm not saying they're phonies, right? But that was his perception. So he thinks about me, and he looks me up, and he had faith that if he called me, I would know what to do. You see? So this is what's called Krishna consciousness. We do have the answers to all the questions, but you have to feel the necessity to receive those answers. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj was one of the most exceptional devotees in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Not only had the answers, he had the compassion to communicate it in a very gentle, friendly, warm, parental, or family member way. And that was his delivery of the knowledge of Krishna consciousness was so genuine and sincere that it just melted the heart of people. That's why he had so many disciples. That's why he's so much beloved in this movement. And it's a very rare thing to be able to disseminate knowledge with such compassion and genuineness. It touches the heart of people, even the most stone-hearted atheist. So he made devotees all over the world. That's the symptom of a pure devotee. He can go anywhere and make devotees, and wherever he goes, he can transform that place into Vaikuntha, a place where there's no anxiety and where people can freely engage in devotional service to please Krishna and Prabhupada and Acharyas, and especially the Guru, Bhakti Charu Maharaj. So that's why we're celebrating today his passing away. Passing away is not a bad thing. Leaving the body is not a bad thing. In fact, for a devotee, it's the most significant moment of their life. So we should not see it as a sad thing if the person's a devotee. If they're not a devotee, it's the most sad thing, believe me. Because in most cases, they're going to end up with a lower order body, like a dog or a cat, because they avoided Krishna consciousness. But if you look at it from the point of view of a devotee, it's the best moment of life, because that's when you remember Krishna and go back to Godhead. And Krishna takes special interest in people who are interested in him, just like you would take special interest in people who are interested in you. Someone who's always speaking nicely about you, someone who's always speaking about your good qualities, someone who's always kind and gentle and very, very appreciative of your existence. So if we become very appreciative of Krishna's existence and we listen to his transcendental speaking to us through the Bhagavad Gita, and listen to other great devotees speaking about him through the Srimad Bhagavatam, then Krishna says, oh, this person's interested in me, I'm going to be interested in them. See? To hear about Krishna from Vedic literature or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita is itself righteous activity. And for one who always hears about Krishna, Krishna who's dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. And therefore, Nasta prayesu abhadresu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamashloke bhaktir bhavati naistike. There are two Bhagavats. There's the book Bhagavat, that's Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the person Bhagavat, that is Srila Prabhupada or Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Both are Bhagavat, meaning the message of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we take an interest in hearing that message, rather than how to flip houses and become a millionaire, or how to invest in the commodity market and become a millionaire, or how to do this or how to do that, if we listen to Krishna, then Krishna takes a special interest in you and then begins to protect you and free you from the anxiety of gain and loss. Everyone's interested in gaining and everyone's afraid of losing. But a devotee is not afraid of gain and loss. A devotee knows that Krishna is protecting me, and somehow or other, even if it's some mysterious way, the Lord is going to help me stay in Krishna consciousness and always be dedicated to serving him. So this is the assurance that one gets by regularly hearing genuine devotees speak Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. This was the assurance that thousands of people got from Bhakti Charu Maharaj. He had thousands of disciples all over the world because they had complete faith in him as a bona fide spiritual master and servant of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. So this is Krishna consciousness. It's completely different than everything else. The pedagogy of Krishna consciousness is the following. You don't have to study. You don't have to take tests. You will be tested. Everyone is going to be tested. But it's not an academic test. It's a real life test, whether you have faith in God or not. And you don't have to study. You simply take part in the regular lectures that take place in the temple. Every morning, every afternoon, every evening, there are lectures. And you hear at least one lecture a day where the Bhagavad Gita is discussed and the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that will enlighten you completely into what's called Atma Tattva, the science of the soul and its eternal relationship with Krishna, and how to manage the soul in the material creation, and how to use material energy in the service of God and spiritualize it. All these things are taught in the Bhagavad Gita. So we should take this very seriously and especially honor great devotees or exceptional devotees like Bhakti Charu Maharaj and especially Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas. We should honor them on their appearance day and disappearance day because that purifies our heart by honoring such people. So I'll stop right there. Are there any questions anyone would like to ask? Any questions? I have one other thing to say here. Let me just find it in my notes. Yeah, just to know what the name Bhakti Charu means. It's a very significant name. It means, Charu means beautiful, and Bhakti means devotion. It means that one is beautiful by dint of, or because of their devotion to God or Krishna. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj was born he was born a little bit before me. So in 1945. I was born in January 1946. And he left his body on July 4th, 2020. He was 74 years old at that time. And his first meeting with Srila Prabhupada was on January 1977. And he was given first and second initiation in Mayapur during the Gaura Purnima festival in March 1977. So in other words, he was He met Prabhupada for the first time in January 1977. Srila Prabhupada, Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai. He meets Srila Prabhupada in January 1977, and 2 months later he's initiated first and second by Prabhupada. And then in June 1977, he receives sannyas initiation. This is incredible that Prabhupada gave him all these initiations in a matter of 6 months. Usually you have to chant Hare Krishna for 6 months or 1 year and pass so many tests and different things in order to get your first initiation. And then you have to wait another 1 to 5 years, sometimes 10 years, it depends on who's your guru, until you get your second initiation. And then to get sannyas, you have to wait till at least 55 or 60 or 65 years old. And Prabhupada gave him first, second, and third initiation in a matter of 6 months. You could see that Prabhupada recognized in him a supremely exceptional person to do that. It's unheard of in ISKCON that one can get all those 3 very, very prominent positions in a matter of 6 months. That just shows you what a person he was. Then Prabhupada made him his personal secretary right after he was initiated, and he also gave him the responsibility to translate all his books into Bengali, and he was very, very particular about Bengali translation, even more than English or any other language, because all the knowledge is in Bengali, about Lord Chaitanya, Bengali and Sanskrit. And Maharaj knew Bengali perfectly. He's a super expert in it. And he also spoke Hindi, and he also knew Sanskrit. So he was eminently qualified to be the personal secretary of Srila Prabhupada. And he translated the entire Srimad Bhagavatam and other books that Prabhupada had written into Bengali. So this is something, I mean, he is definitely a very exceptional devotee. And nobody dies, actually. They just change their body. So he's with Prabhupada now, continuing his very intimate service with him. This is something we have to be sure about, that the soul is eternal. If you accept that your soul is eternal and that Krishna is Supreme Personality Godhead, obviously he's eternal, then you begin your Krishna consciousness. If you can't accept that, you don't even make one step towards spirituality. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, and now we'll continue with the program. What? Okay, today is the appearance day of Maharaj. Fine. So, you want to chant? Yeah, take it. Okay.
Shri Guru Charana Pakate Sadma Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Vandamo hi sabadana mate Vandamo hi sabadana mate Jahara prasade bhai e bhavatoriya jai Jahara prasade bhai e bhavatoriya jai Krishna prapti hoy jaha hoite Krishna prapti hoy jaha hoite Guru mukha padma bhakhya chitete koriya ikhya Guru mukha padma vakhya chitete koriya aikhya Guru arana kori ho mane asha Arana kore ho mane asha Shri Guru Charane rate Aise Uttama gati Shri Guru Charane rate Aise Uttama gati Jai prasade pure sarva asha Jai prasade pure sarva asha चक्षुदान जिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से ओ चक्षुदान जिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते वेद गाय जहाँ चरितो वेद गाय जहाँ चरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आधम जनारा बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आधम जनारा बंधु लोकेनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना ओ लोकेनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना आहा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया आहा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया आहा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया एबे जाय गो सक्रे भुवाना ओ एबे जाय गो सक्रे भुवाना जय प्रभु पदा जय प्रभु पदा जय प्रभु पदा जय प्रभु पदा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरा भक्त वृंद Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Nila Madhav Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Nila Madhav Shri Radhe. O Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Srila Gurudev. Gurudev, Srila Gurudev. Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Sama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Mayapura Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Ganga Maya ki jai. Jamuna Maya ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavan ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vestaya Bhutri Srimati Bhakti Swamitaya. Namaste Saraswati Devi. Shri Pushpanjali Puja ki jai. Om Aganya Timirandasya Yananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Asmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Pajakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vishakam Sanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamine Shivasavani Videvi Daita Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujjvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Shakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchitananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Bhava Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Savabhumashri Shri Jagannatayate Namaha Vanchakalpa Turabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurutuse Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhakta Kyam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Pangur Mama Manda Matirgati Matsarvasva Padambojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpajumadaha Shrimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shrimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prestali Bihi Sevyamano Smarami Shriman Rasarasarambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venusvaner Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustute Devi Paramami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Charu Swamin Iti Namine Snigdha Chetaha Supraneta Vangminamcha Rasaplatum Prabhupada Gata Prana Navami Bhakti Charu Padam Desha Pushpanjali Swaha.
Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Namavam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Charu Swamin Iti Namine Snigdha Chetaha Supraneta Vangminamcha Rasaplatum Prabhupada Kata Prana Navami Bhakti Charu Padam Desha Pushpanjali Swaha. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namah Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Charu Swamin Iti Namine Snikta Chetah Supraneta Vangminam Cha Rasaplatum Prabhupada Gata Prana Nuvami Bhakti Charu Padam Desha Pushpanjali Swaha. Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare.
We have a lot of love and respect for Bhakti Charu Maharaj. He did a lot for this temple, and we always pray for his welfare. We know that he's with Prabhupada now, and he's engaging further in devotional service for his Gurudev. And we hope that this gives us all faith that we can also engage in Krishna consciousness and also be successful, making this movement significant in the lives of people, especially in this Kali Yuga when so many people are suffering. They have a chance to become free of the laws of material nature, of the three modes of material nature, of birth, death, old age, and disease, and go back to Godhead. So we should follow the example of Bhakti Charu Maharaj. He was a world-class preacher. Everywhere he went, he inspired people to chant Hare Krishna and to have impeccable behavior of tolerance and dedication to Prabhupada and Vaishnavacharyas, and Shastric evidence to back up all our statements. Imagine, he translated the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. That means he spent almost as much time as Srila Prabhupada. So that's not an easy thing to do. It's a great, great accomplishment. So today we're going to remember him, be inspired by him, pray for his continued success preaching Krishna consciousness. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj ki jai. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj, and thank you for all the devotees for coming and dancing ecstatically for Maharaj celebrating his 77th Vyasa Puja. We thank you very much. Hare Krishna.